Today on Jake's Takes, we're going to talk about Leonardo DiCaprio's questionably young girlfriend, Turning Red and what my beef is with it, Avatar, bad advertising, okay movie. All of that and more on Jake's Takes. Hello. Welcome to Jake's Takes. I'm your host, Jake Critcher. You guessed it. You may know my voice from a little podcast called Small Tales with Jake Critcher that I previously told many stories of mostly my barista life. If not, welcome. And you can always go check out Small Tales with Jake Critcher. Little plug there. Jake's Takes is something I started in order to get a little bit of my perspective on things like movies, music, video games. I'm into all those things. Really, it's all the reasons you listen to anybody ramble on a podcast. Opinions, right? And you can hate me. You can love me. But that's the point. So, starting off today, we're going to talk about something controversial that's come up in all over the internet lately. Leonardo DiCaprio. He's got a questionably young girlfriend. 19, in fact. It's worth noting that he's in his 50s. This is not uncommon, I don't think, for Hollywood actors. I would expect nothing less, to be honest with you. But most of the controversy comes around the opinions online, mostly Twitter, and people just ragging on this guy for being borderline a sexual predator. The interesting thing about that is these same types simultaneously argue that a 15-year-old or a 10-year-old or an 11-year-old can consent to sex changes, and yet they're not old enough to consent to a relationship with a 50-year-old man. Not saying it's a good thing, but it does make you think. That does kind of bring me to the next thing, which is the movie Turning Red. Yeah, I know it came out a little bit ago, but I finally came around to watching it because all the controversy coming around it, and a lot of conservatives didn't like it because it represents a lot like poor family dynamic, which it certainly has. And the symbolism, I think, goes deeper than a lot of people realize as well. So I'm going to talk about that. But it kind of comes with the the young girl's theme of Leonardo DiCaprio and his girlfriend. But starting out of the movie, pretty much the opening line, the main character says something along the lines of, "I'm 13, which basically I'm an adult," which I laughed at it at first. I was like, haha, kids. But that becomes a recurring strong theme throughout the movie, and it doesn't really let up, which is concerning. It is concerning. And it's because of things like this Leonardo DiCaprio story. And as soon as you accept, or not even accept, as soon as you entertain the idea that a 13-year-old is a grown adult who can consent to things, I hate to use a slippery slope analogy, but not really. I don't hate using the slippery slope analogy because look where we are. Thanks, Disney, for another installment of kids and why they should be not kids anymore. So like a lot of movies, they demonize the parents in this movie, and it's definitely unfortunate and also unfortunately not unexpected anymore. But the difference here is that not only have they established that this kid is not a kid and in fact an adult at 13, but that the parents are not her friend. And throughout the movie, there's no reconciliation, there's no teamwork in the family at all. The dad's kind of this, they make him off to be a sweet character, but he's also kind of absent and not really involved with any of the major decisions. So it comes with an overbearing mother, and then and really that's the overarching theme, is that the girl has issues with the authority of her mother, and they never really get over it. Honestly, the ending at this point, it's not much of a spoiler at this point if you haven't seen it. You probably don't intend to see it. That's why I suffer for you, so that you don't have to suffer. So is it really that bad? That was the question I came in to this movie when I started. Yeah, it kind of is. I really hoped it wasn't. I figured the outrage was probably a little exaggerated. But honestly, the symbolism and the stuff that goes on in this movie is not something I would want my kids seeing. Do I have kids? No, but let's just say I wouldn't expect my parents to have let me watch that as a young kid. And, all the issues in the movie are totally fine normally if there's some kind of reckoning at the end where they come together as a family and there's some sort of mutual respect. But honestly, in the end, it ends up being the mom is the villain, like literally the villain. Uh, so the whole premise is the main character turns into a giant panda, and it turns out it's a hereditary thing. It runs in the family. So in the end, the mother also turns into a giant panda, but like Godzilla-sized giant panda, and they literally end up physically fighting each other. The daughter obviously wins because that's the whole message of this movie. And there's zero reconciliation. It's just kind of like, oh, mom, you got mad. I got mad at you. I literally physically beat you up. And now I get what I want. And that's how the movie ended. So the lesson here is whine until you get what you want. Your parents suck. And it's okay to be a complete and total monster. It could be argued also that the symbolism of the transforming into the panda could be like a coming out or a representation of transsexuality. I don't think that's nothing to sneeze at. I do think they're probably hinting at it. I mean, Disney has come out and literally said that they want as much gay content and much LGBT content in this stuff as possible. So that would not shock me at all. I would say probably they are doing a little bit of that. Was it the main focus? I'm not sure about that. But it definitely could be construed as such. And then couple that with the fact that they're trying to adultize this kid at 13. It brings in some shady things. I can see the boomers now thinking the pedophiles are next. That'll be normalized next. If they're an adult at 13, then yeah, see my problem here. So on the topic of movies, we're going to move on to Avatar 2. Had an atrocious opening weekend on whenever it came out. I honestly don't know the date. It's a long time ago at this point. But the whole controversy was that the opening weekend was just awful. They were looking at an $80 million loss on the opening weekend, and that's like abysmal. They spent over $100 million on this movie, so yeah, that's a big loss. It is now supposedly, I haven't really looked into it. You can fact check me on this one. Apparently, it has surpassed Infinity War at this point, which was the record, and I was surprised by that after that horrible opening weekend. So that begs the question: why did it do so bad on its opening weekend? Well, it can be attributed apparently to James Cameron himself. He apparently talked this up as a woke masterpiece of a movie, and it was going to be a good voice of a movie for indigenous peoples, and just any eco rights, anything as far as like saving the planet and stuff. So basically, James Cameron dug his own grave here, which is, if you're honest with yourself, a little bit funny. I mean, come on. He basically destroyed his own opening weekend. Does that destroy its chances of a sequel? Probably not. Apparently, after breaking records, they're probably going to make more. And from what I've read, they're going to make at least 5, which to me, 2 was kind of milking it. I expected a third because usually things work in trilogies. Apparently, they're working on 5. We'll see if that pans out. After that opening weekend, I was like, psh, this series is done. But it somehow came out and beat Infinity War, so, which is insane because the numbers for Infinity War are just immense. So was the movie that bad? Was it that woke? Honestly, no, it really wasn't. So I thought it was hilarious that James Cameron honestly talked this up so much, like it was going to be this awakening of a movie, but quite frankly, it wasn't any more woke than the first one. And honestly, it was ridiculously similar to the first one. And albeit similar, it was still fairly enjoyable. Now, again, I watch these things so that you don't have to. I can tell you it's an okay movie. If you liked the first, you'll probably like the second, but it is a little bit more of the same. So if that bores you, then I wouldn't blame you for skipping out on this one. But it's funny because this movie got originally got flack from like the right side of politics because of the he was talking up the wokeness and the indigenous peoples thing and checking all these boxes. But it turns out the movie's not that woke, so that's interesting. So slowly the ticket sales went up, and then the outrage came from the other side of the aisle when they were equating indigenous people to the blue people in this movie, the Na'vi. Uh, it was a stretch to call them indigenous to begin with, and now they are outraged, of course, that they are perpetuating and stereotyping cultures of the indigenous people. We could have saw this coming, honestly. You can't even make people blue without having an issue politically, and this is where we're at. This is where we're at. Apparently, all of the preaching that James Cameron did to hype up this movie didn't save him from the wrath of the left. So here we are. So aside from 3/4 into the movie it becoming basically Free Willy, which was a rather sudden and uninteresting turn, it was an okay movie. The ending moral was incredibly obvious. I mean, the main premise is that he runs away from the people that are attacking him. He wanted to escape his main village so that they weren't in danger, but then he just goes to a new one and they're in danger, which I've suspected right from the beginning of the movie. And at the end, he's just like, I'll have to stay where I am and be strong. I'm like, I could have told you that 5 minutes in, brother. So moving on to something a little more lighthearted and less critical. But more actually critical of oneself. There's a little app called Habitica that I've been using, as my wife and I have been using actually, to kind of create new habits. It's a habit making app that's spelled like the word habit and then ICA, Habitica. It's set up to be like a to-do list and a habit creator, but it's set up in the way of a video game. So if you're a gamer, this might be enticing to you. I've tried many of these to-do list apps, and they just don't cut it for me. They're not motivating enough, and these gimmicks that they do just haven't really sold me. However, this one, I was shocked to see that it's surprisingly motivating to check off a box and hear the little jingle of like a video game jingle, and that gives you like experience points, and you have this little avatar you can level up and equip with different equipment, and learn spells. You can change your class. And it's pretty low key, being a not a game and an actual thing where you're supposed to be getting real stuff done in real life. So it's pretty slow paced in that department, but it should be, I think. So, but we've really enjoyed it. You can party up with people. So my wife and I are in a party together. I'm a mage, she's a rogue, and we do our to-do list, we do our chores and stuff, and check things off, and we'll level up. And that allows us to, whenever you complete tasks, you can do quests together and either defeat a boss, you can collect items to complete a quest, and it's pretty cool. So if you're looking to make new habits or to break habits you don't care for so much, it's been a good tool for me, so maybe you should check it out. Aside from that unpaid advertisement for an app, I just wanted to share something that we've been enjoying lately. Kind of along those lines is something I heard today, and actually this past week, I've been listening to a show called the Masters Program with Dennis Prager. He had some really good insights on just general happiness in life. And one thing that stuck with me was something I want to leave with you today. He said, only you can affect your happiness. Only you can affect your happiness. So along those lines, it's kind of like, it's more than just a feeling. Happiness is less than, it's more than pleasure. It's like something you make happen, and you can't rely on someone to give you the happiness, because there's people with horrible situations who are, living life and happy as ever. A book comes to mind. I read A Hiding Place from Corrie ten Boom. She wrote her own account of World War II. Really, she ended up in a prison camp in Germany and lost her sister there, and she came back and lived a happy life after all this. And even had to go through some forgiveness and stuff. So there's people that go through really tragic things that can be happy, and I think that comes from making your own happiness. I mean, you have to really seek it and do it, and not rely on your situation, your circumstances, other people. They can't make you happy. It has to be you. That's something that stuck with me, and I figured I'd leave that with you today. Thanks for listening to Jake's Takes. I'll see you next week.